All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Manly Hoops podcast, where we're doing some Big 12 team previews. If you are enjoying the content, make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support. But we're diving into Utah today. We're going to kick it off with Cody to talk about the offensive strengths of the Utes.
Yeah, obviously a lot of roster turnover here. New coach as well with some NBA influence. Was an NBA assistant for a while. I believe he was with the Jazz last before moving on here. So not too far of a travel for him, but yeah, it's going to be obviously it's it, he's going to have to put together a pretty good coaching job this year. Just the the roster overall isn't like it's not going to blow you away on the offensive end, but what they are going to have, I believe, is a solid transition attack. I believe Jensen's going to be a guy that wants to run a little bit. Most of these former NBA assistants will come in; they'll look to run early and often, and I think he has some of the personnel to do so. And led by Don McHenry and Terrence Brown, just two quick twitch guards that love to get into the lane and just you love to play in transition as a whole. And then when you have some mobile bigs and wings that I think create a roster that's going to like this style. So in guys like Elijah Moore, I think likes to run some like Seydou Traore, Keanu Dawes, especially he's probably going to play the five, and then Ja'Kai Howard coming from Auburn obviously likes to play in transition. It would be nice if they had Babacar Faye this year. I mean, he was supposed to be like a real impact for this team. He's going to be out for the season. I think it was a knee injury. I'm not completely sure, but he would have been a nice addition to this front court. But I also think it's going to be a team that gets on the offensive glass at a pretty high level. Going to be led by Keanu Dawes and James Okonkwo, who's coming from Akron. He was 16.8% for an offensive rebound rate. That's seventh nationally among qualifiers last season. And Keanu Dawes was 11.6% last season. So, and these two guys can play side by side due to the mobility of Dawes. He can slide down to the four. Would like for him to shoot it a little bit better, but I think there's a little bit of upside there. And I think this can create a pretty solid offensive rebounding attack. They obviously have their weaknesses, but I think Jensen can kind of get the most out of this roster.
All right, Marcus, you got anything to add strength wise, and I'll let you dive right into weaknesses afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to just mention, I guess, like I do think, to Cody's point, I think Dawes does have some more shooting in the tank. Like last year, low volume, 12 for 35, 34%. His freshman year at Rice, he was 21 for 72, so right around 29, 30% for his career now. I think there's a little bit more in the tank there. That would be a pretty substantial add for this team that, I'll get into here in a minute where they're lacking. And then I think a guy like Don McHenry, who, while he's not an overly efficient guy, right? I mean, he shot at 39%, I think, from the field last year, 31% from the floor. He does have the ability to create his own shot. And, he scored it at a fairly high level at Western Kentucky for a few years. So I think it will pay dividends to have him, like you mentioned, running the transition attack and also as a guy in the half court that can create his own shot, because I think there are some guys, or that is an area maybe where they're lacking, is a lot of like shot creators in the half court. But yeah, so to kind of turn to weaknesses on the offensive end now, shooting, I think is a pretty glaring weakness overall. There's just not a ton across the board, right? We talked about Dawes, who maybe has some upside. McHenry, he's a career 33% shooter, 30% last year. I think last year was kind of a down year for him. I remember, his first year at Western Kentucky, he shot at 37% and was a bit more efficient. Last year, just did not shoot it well at all. You got Ja'Kai Howard coming in from Auburn. Small sample size last year. He kind of like projects based on his percentage last year as like their best shooter, 41%, but only 22 attempts. So there's just not a long track record there. And then you've got a bunch of other guys that are really living in that upper 20s, low 30s percentage, like Seydou Traore, Terrence Brown, 27%. And then a guy like Alvin Jackson, the third, coming from Salt Lake Community College. He looks to maybe have some upside in like catch and shoot situations, maybe out of the corner, but he's not going to be like a movement shooter of any type. He shot at 31% at Salt Lake last year. So I just think across the board, this team really lacks shooting, which is going to make their half-court offense very difficult. To Cody's point, why they're probably going to have to push the tempo a little bit more. McHenry's not an efficient guard, as I said. So I think that's probably my main concern. A couple other things to mention. I'm not in love with the overall depth of this roster, particularly in like the on-ball creation department. Like Don McHenry doesn't really create for anyone but himself. He has shown that, for a couple of years. Terrence Brown coming over from FDU, 21% assist rate. So he has some ability there. But overall, like the guard depth isn't overly staggering, particularly in the creation department. Elijah Moore coming over, 11% assist rate. So I do have, a few concerns with this offensive unit, which is why, Torvik has them closer to the bottom of the Big 12.
Cody, anything to add for concerns offensively?
Yeah, I would agree with most of those points. The raw shooting numbers aren't the greatest, but I think there's a little bit more upside throughout this roster. Obviously, it's not going to be like a strength of this team, but I think like guys like Elijah Moore and Jacob Patrick as well, the German, they're bringing in he averaged 9 points per game in Germany's top league, I believe. He shot it really well over there, or shot it fine, but I think there's a little more shooting talent in the tank with him. Moore as a freshman shot at 31.5%. Never really got clean looks in that Syracuse offense, but when watching the film, like there's obviously some shooting talent there, quick trigger, and can shoot it on the move a little bit as well. And then obviously with Chikai Howard, there's upside there, but I guess there's some off the court issues. There was, even on the court issues with him. He was he went pretty viral at the beginning of the year for being upset that he wasn't getting the ball when they were up by 50 against Vermont. I remember that the first game of the year, but ultimately I'm not going to sit here and freak out about his character issues. I don't know him personally or any of his teammates, so I couldn't really tell you on that. But yeah, I would agree for the most part that there are half-court offensive questions, especially like can McHenry and Terrence Brown coexist? Like they're both ball-dominant pieces that struggle with their perimeter games and would ideally like to get out in the open floor. But if teams can like emphasize transition defense, I think they're going to have a really tough time. Like Brown is a super rim-reliant guard, and I'm not very high on mid-major rim-reliant guards trying to play up in a power league, especially in the Big 12. There's a lot of really good bigs in this league, a lot of good rim protectors. So it's going to be a jump for him. It's going to be a transition. And yeah, so I'm not super high on the offense as a whole. I think they do some good things. I don't think floor efficiency in the half court is going to be one of them.
Marcus, we'll send it back over to you to talk defensive strengths actually for the Utes.
Yeah. To me, I think the strengths here kind of lie on the interior. You've got Keanu Dawes, who Cody talked about at the top, and off camera he expects to be kind of a breakout player for them. He gets all over the defensive glass. He's not like a super rim protector, 3% block rate, but he has the ability to, I think, kind of play like Cody was talking about on the offensive side, alongside like James Okonkwo, who's now played at, this is his fourth school, but everywhere he's been a solid rim protector, 6% block rate. He's also been another guy that's been all over the defensive glass with a 25% career defensive rebound rate. Going back to his days at like West Virginia when he was in the Big 12, he was 22% and 25% with a block rate, right around 8.5%, 9% in his time there. So I think the interior of this Utah defense should be pretty solid. I think, Dawes has some versatility in his game. I think they both can really help Utah to secure the defensive glass a little bit. And I think there's some rim protection there. Obviously, like behind them, it is a little bit more uncertain. Especially after Babacar Faye is out, for the year. He would have been a piece on this end as well. But there's like the freshman Jackson Johnson, but he's like nobody really knows obviously what some of these freshmen are going to bring to the table. So it's hard to kind of expect much out of the front court depth. But I think there is some upside with those two in Dawes and Okonkwo in the front line.
Cody, anything you want to add for strengths before diving into weaknesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think the front court's going to be the strength of this defense. I think, like you mentioned, Dawes and Okonkwo are going to be able to play together for large spurts, maybe even potentially be the main front court unit if they really need it to be. Another piece, JUCO transfer Josh Hayes, I think is going to be more of a defensive-minded guy, 6'10", averaged a block and a half per game at Northwest Florida State. I like Sede Traore as well as a 3-4 swingman. I think he can be really good there. I think their positional size, at least up front, is going to be really solid, and I think it's a team that's going to be good on the defensive glass. And I also like the playmaking of the backcourt. They're a little bit small, and like Mike, the only real concern I have on the outset is they're like, can they stay on the floor together all the time for both ends, like offense and defense, and can they be switchable at all? But I do like their ability to make plays on the defensive side. 2.6% steal rate for McHenry last year. Terrence Brown was really good, 3.2%. He's always looking to make a play on the ball. Really good athlete, quick twitch. Both guys are really quick twitch, and they have good athletic traits to them. They probably play a little bit bigger than their 6'2" and 6'3" listed heights. So yeah, I kind of like this defensive group. I think they're going to be a defense first team.
Marcus, I'll send it back over to you. Any weaknesses to add, or?
No, not really. I think like Cody said, I think the defense of this team is going to be its strength. I think it kind of has to be because offense. I think it's going to lead to their transition attack, like Cody said, and also their half court offense, like I was talking about. I have some concerns with how that will look and how efficient that unit will be.
All right, well, we're going to move right along then to the MVP and the X factor of the Utes. Marcus, we'll send it over to you.
Yeah, I went MVP Keanu Dawes. I think, I think he's due for kind of a bigger leap. He showed a lot of ability on both ends on the glass. As I was talking about, I think he has more upside as a shooter. There's going to be more opportunity there on the offensive end. I wouldn't be shocked if he was up in like the 14, 15 point per game range. I think he has a lot of value to bring to this team in the transition game. He moves well. And then on the defensive end, of course, like we talked about. And then X factor, I went with Don McHenry. How efficient can he be? A little bit more efficient? Can he shoot it better than he did last year? More like his first year at Western Kentucky. Can he get back to that? Even if he gets back to 35% or something, just to be a bit more serviceable to just coexist, I guess, with Terrence Brown in the backcourt. And then, can he run the charge a little bit? Can he help get other guys' shots a little bit more? Because we've seen now his career assist rate is hovering, like last year was 11%, or 13%. Year before was 14%. Like he's never been one to generate offense for others. And so can he kind of take that next step as a lead guard, right, in an NBA, what we expect to be more of an NBA style system. So I'll be interested to see how that looks. And I think he's going to have to like put the ball in the bucket more efficiently if this team wants to be something.
Cody, who's your MVP and X factor? Are you in agreement with Marcus, or did you go a different route?
And for MVP, I went with Dawes. I almost made it Dawes for both, for all the reasons that he said. I think he's going to be a really high level two-way impact for this team. Just hasn't really seen the usage or the minutes yet at the power conference level. I think he's going to be able to emerge this year. But my X factor, I went with Terrence Brown. I went with him for pretty much all the reasons that you said about Don McHenry. Honestly, I think he's a more certain playmaker than McHenry is, and I think this team really needs like an on ball, not star, but they need a guy who's able to initiate offense for others. He's going to be able to get downhill and make a play with the best of them. I mean, he's for a guard, he probably has some of the most burst in this entire league. It's just a matter of, can he operate in a half court setting? Can he operate in pick and roll as a ball handler? And can he be poised enough to sort of carry the backcourt for a solid Big 12 team?
Marcus, what's the ceiling and what's the floor for the Utah Utes this year?
I said ceiling is like 10th or 11th. I don't know. To me, this is a team that has a pretty narrow range of outcomes. I don't really see them at the bottom because I think there's enough here to be better than the very bottom of the Big 12. So I said 10th or 11th, and then their floor at 14. So 16 teams in the Big 12. I think they're a couple spots better than, being at the bottom of this league.
And then do you have a bold prediction for this year?
Come back to me.
All right, Cody, what's your ceiling? What's your floor?
My ceiling is 9th in the league. I think their defense can carry them for a large portion of the season. And I also think their offensive rebounding is going to keep their offense away from being a disaster. I do think it's going to look fairly ugly at times, but I think they have enough qualities. And I think Alex Jensen, as coming in as an NBA assistant, can help at least elevate this offense a little bit. Like, the roster doesn't look fantastic from a perimeter shot making standpoint, but I think he can do a lot of things to optimize what this group does best. And I actually made their floor 13th in the league. I think the defense can also carry the way to give them an extremely high floor. And there are some teams down at the bottom that I'm not very high on, and I just don't see this team getting to that point. So yeah, I think it's a pretty narrow range of outcomes, and I think this is a team that can they can hold their own in this league, in my opinion. And
do you have a bold prediction you want to throw out there?
Yeah, my bold prediction is they hang in there for a large portion of the season, and I think they're in tourney conversations for a decent bit this season. I think their high floor and their home floor is going to play a real factor here. It's a really tough place to play in elevation. They can steal some games against some of the top teams in this league. They can keep up with anyone size-wise, athletically. So I think their traits are going to play up in the biggest games, and I think this defense is going to keep them away from disaster potential. So it wouldn't shock me at all if they ultimately made the tournament as like a last four in team, but I kind of expect them to hang around on the bubble for a large portion.
Marcus, let's hear your bold prediction.
Yeah, I'm going to go Don McHenry driven because I remember he's just the guy that I've talked about a bunch, even back in the transfer portal review videos. I'm going to say he gets back to more of his freshman year, or his first year, I guess, because he wasn't a freshman, his first year at Western Kentucky. 3-point shooting. He's going to shoot at least 36%. He's going to have a career high effective field goal percentage. So he's going to be over 51.8%. And he's going to have a career high in assist rate. It's going to get over 18%.
All right. Big year for Don McHenry. We're going to wrap things up here. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.